America. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from Washington, D.C., and of course, the wiredtofishcoffee.com studios. You know this, Wired to Fish Coffee is my favorite coffee, the official coffee of Just the News. It's a coffee that does good with every drink you make because it donates its profits back to conservation and Christian faith organizations. All you got to do is go to wiredtofishcoffee.com, use the promo code JustNews at checkout, 10% off all of their products, or you can just aim your camera at that QR code and you'll be on your way. All right, we're keeping an eye on something that just happened a little bit ago. There's a report of a knife attacker near the University of Virginia campus. We're going to keep you up to speed. We're watching that at Just the News right now. Right now, no word of anyone injured or killed, but we're watching it closely. Right, let's start with the big news in Washington. There was a much-hyped release of the Epstein files, or was it? Attorney General Pam Bondi teased them last night, and sure enough, the first part of them, what the Department of Justice termed Phase 1, were released, and intriguingly, they weren't just put up online for the public. They weren't at all. They were released in binders, given out to a handful of social media influencers, and much of what has come out from those influencers from that release, well, it hasn't been anything incredibly interesting yet, at least not right now. But a new development arose after the release of those Phase 1 documents when Attorney General Bondi sent a letter to new FBI Director Kash Patel saying that despite assurances from the FBI that they had delivered all of the relevant Epstein documents to her office, they had, in fact, not done so. Bondi goes on to say she learned from a whistleblower that the FBI field office in New York has in its possession thousands of pages related to the Epstein investigation indictment, and they weren't turned over. The existence of those files were never even disclosed. The Attorney General has demanded those files be delivered to her desk by 8 a.m. tomorrow. There's a high noon deadline, or actually before high noon, 8 a.m. She instructed FBI Director Patel to investigate why the FBI failed to comply with their orders. So we'll see where that all leads soon. We'll have much more on that for you at Just the News. And of course, throughout the show today, we're going to be talking to people. Also, an exclusive you can check out at justthenews.com. I wrote about last night, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials were being warned to take extra special security precautions because of fellow U.S. workers, USAID workers who have been fired. Custom and Border Patrol agents were told, Border Protection were told to keep situational awareness, maybe even cover up the uniforms, because as those USAID fired workers came back to gather their belongings at the end of this week, there was the potential for protest or unrest in the office. We've been watching that and we're keeping a close eye on that. That came from the Operations Watch Alert System for Customs and Border Protection employees. While keeping an eye on that, today was a pretty light day, no sign of tensions, but we're watching closely just in case. All right. Meanwhile, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, well, it just keeps on going. We're going to talk about that in the second block with Senator Ron Johnson, who has a lot of alignment with what Elon Musk is doing. But before we do all that, I want to turn over to my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. You've got some other headlines you're watching, right?
Indeed, I do, yes. I was there today at the meeting between the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and President Trump, and it seemed to be quite cordial, despite the two being on pretty opposite ends of the political spectrum, with a number of things being discussed, including trade between the two countries, as well as the war in Ukraine and securing a lasting peace between Ukraine and Russia. And in their press conference, Starmer even complimented President Trump for creating the opportunity for peace after the Biden administration famously refused to negotiate with Russia. It's kind of part of the deal. You have to do that. So take a look at what he said.
Mr. President, I welcome your deep and personal commitment to bring peace and to stop the killing. You've created a moment of tremendous opportunity to reach a historic peace deal, a deal that I think would be celebrated in Ukraine and around the world. That is the prize.
Really, really warm reception there. Yeah. And the Prime Minister also gave President Trump, hand-delivered him, an invitation for a state visit from King Charles, and that was a great moment in their meeting. Here it is.
And it is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know.
He is a great gentleman.
It's an invitation for a second state visit. This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us.
Not every day you get a second invitation for a state visit pulled from the lapel pocket of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And Starmer even discussed the fact that Europe as a whole is not contributing their fair share when it comes to defense spending, and conceded to President Trump that if his country and others upped their spending on their militaries, that would be beneficial, of course, to everyone. And perhaps this moment from the meeting helped him along.
Whenever necessary, we absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the
Could
core
you
of
take
the
on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
A very blunt question that brought reality tumbling down.
You know what's amazing about these exchanges is how far Europe has moved towards Donald Trump. The resistance in Europe has melted, because they always do. Donald Trump had the right approach, and I think they're realizing it now, and he said so today. And I think that was an extraordinary moment. All right, we've been promised a lot of transparency in the Trump administration. We're getting it with Doge already. Some of those deep state agencies, well, they're still putting their foot out, tripping things up. Ron Johnson having a hard time getting vaccine safety data. The FBI having a hard time getting the Epstein files together, as Pam Bondi reminded us. But I think we have a good idea of what we might eventually get in the near future, because I don't think the Trump people are going to stop until they get it all out. Joining us right now, one of the greatest investigative journalists I've ever worked with. He's the director of research at the Government Accountability Institute. He's an author of that great book, Control Oligarchs. He's my good friend, Seamus Brenner. Seamus, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Hey, John, Amanda, it's so good to see you.
All right. I think everybody thought, hey, we're getting the Epstein client list. And what they got today was like a really bad version of the phone book. Obviously, some behind-the-scenes maneuvering. The Trump administration couldn't get what it wanted from the bureaucracy. It's just going to have to dig a second time. But I think you have some good idea of what ultimately will be in these documents. Tell us what you think the FBI might be withholding that we one day will get.
Yeah, it was kind of a swing and a miss today. And there's been so many wins lately that I guess, we're due for one underwhelming announcement. But we have not seen anything in these documents that we haven't seen before. It's certainly no so-called client list. What we need to see is the people who were so-called clients. And really, I mean, documents are going to be great. I'm looking forward to, some 2,000 pages apparently that Pam Bondi is going to get from the FBI. At least we hope so. We hope it hasn't been deleted. There's a whistleblower who says that documents are being deleted. We haven't confirmed that. But really what we need is arrests. There's no statute of limitations on some of these crimes like human trafficking and crimes against children. There's no statute of limitations. So what we need are arrests. Alina Habba has said that there will be arrests, or at least there should be. And so that's the next announcement I want to hear. I don't want to read any more, flight logs. Flight logs are not evidence of anything. I mean, people fly on Jeffrey Epstein's flight. It's not the best move, but some of these people didn't know what he was up to. So it's not a sign of guilt that someone flew on his plane, and it's not a sign of guilt that they were in his black book or in his contact list. And so more details about people who are in contact lists or on the flight logs, that's old news. We've been through it many, many times. I'm not the only person who's read all of these documents. We need to know evidence of guilt, and there need to be arrests.
Do you think we'll ever know it all? Do you think we'll ever find out exactly who was on the list, who maybe even was above Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, that's still a huge question for a lot of people, is who was directing Jeffrey Epstein? Do you think we'll ever get it all?
Well, there's a lot of, incidents throughout our history where we still don't know it all. The JFK files, I understand that the Trump administration wants to release JFK files. There's other incidents where we don't have all the facts. So I don't know, Amanda, if we'll have it in this century or maybe next. I hope so. We need to. We need to know who was above Jeffrey Epstein, who was directing this operation. Here's the thing I really wonder is, back when all of this stuff broke years and years ago, there were reports, I believe it was the New York Post and the Miami Herald has done some really good work on this. The FBI apparently seized vaults of tapes. There were people on tape. None of us want to see what's on those tapes, but what happened to those tapes? Who has those tapes? Is our intelligence community keeping those because they want to maintain the leverage that having powerful people on tape doing horrible things provides? There's a lot we need to know, and so I do have hope that, in phase one here, that there will be phase 2 and 3 and 4 and many more to come, and we will get at least much closer to the full picture. But right now, I don't have a whole lot of confidence until we get some more.
And multiple members of Congress have come on this show, Seamus, saying that they want to know the answer. Yeah. Was Jeffrey Epstein or his evidence used to blackmail people in any form, in any under the government's color or in concert with the government? That's a really important question. When members of Congress say it openly now, you realize that they know there's something there that they want to get an answer to. Another thing we don't know everything about, seems hard to believe after all the work you and I and everyone else has done, is we still don't know all the tactics that the FBI and the intelligence community used to spy on President Trump's campaign during the so-called Russia collusion caper, which turned out to be no collusion, and the only caper was the misdeeds of the intelligence community. But the documents President Trump declassified January 20th, 2021, never got released. A month into this president, they're still not released. How important is it that we find out all the things that the FBI may have done to surveil our president?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, honeypot is the word of the day. James Comey is allegedly, we've not confirmed this yet, but running a honeypot operation on the Trump 2016 campaign. And so who that was targeting, I don't know that it was President Trump himself, maybe just members of the campaign. But it's unsettling. I guess it's a feature of running an intelligence agency like the FBI or CIA to try to entrap people. You just would hope it would be the country's enemies, not our candidates for president like Donald Trump. And so we hope to get more information on that. I mean, that was a really shocker. I'm thin on details as far as whether Comey's FBI was running honeypot operations, but they were up to so many dirty tricks, John, as you know so well, and I know, so many dirty tricks going on in 2016, even in 2020, that I wouldn't put anything past James Comey and his crew.
There's a heavily redacted passage from the fourth FISA warrant, the final FISA warrant, that I think could be one of the most important eliminations of a redaction in American history. We're fighting to get it. Hopefully we'll get it there. But we need to know all the tactics that were used to spy on a president and his campaign. I hope we get there soon. I want to turn to one other subject, the way that we're digging in more and more to Doge. We're starting to get a good sense of how the government worked. Why could one businessman do what 25 years of Congress could never do, which is unveil where our money was really going?
Yeah, that's the biggest question I have is why did it take so long to reveal all of this stuff? It really does feel at times that many, at least in the Republican Party, are controlled opposition, while it, like at the border, for example, all it took, Trump is making it look so easy to stop these, waves and waves of migrants. Why did it take so long? Why has it taken decades? Conservatives have been fighting for reducing the size of government for decades, and yet all of a sudden, one businessman, Elon Musk, with Doge and Donald Trump's blessing, has been able to do what Republicans haven't been able to do in a generation or two. So this is really encouraging stuff, but it makes you wonder, all of the Republican excuses about, we need to, it takes time or it's difficult to do. It doesn't seem like it's actually all that difficult. You just need the political will.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And a bunch of 20-something and Elon Musk had the will and the capability to do it quickly. We know one thing, you have the will and the capability to do some of the greatest investigative journalists this country's ever seen. You and Peter and the great gang at GAI, we're so lucky to have you. Seamus, thanks for joining us today.
John, Amanda, thanks.
All right, folks, go get his book, Control Oligarchs. It's one of the best reads of the last 5 or 6 years, one of my favorite books. All right, coming up after the break, I had a chance to sit down with Senator Ron Johnson earlier today. You're going to want to take a listen. He has a lot to say, including some news about some new vaccine data. We'll have that right after the commercial break. Welcome back, America. Amanda she stepped out for a second, did a little bit of White House reporting. She'll rejoin us in the next block, but we've got a big surprise for you. If you've been watching Elon Musk, he is going agency by agency, line by line, budget by budget, sometimes even using artificial intelligence to get to the bottom of what federal bureaucrats have been spending over the last couple of decades. Now, if that approach sounds familiar to you, it's probably because you've been watching this show and you've heard our next guest say it, because the first person I ever heard suggest take that approach was the great senator from the state of Wisconsin, our good friend, Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, good to have you back on the show.
Well, thanks for having me on, John.
You're a CEO in an earlier life. Elon Musk is CEO. It's kind of funny when a non-politician starts taking a look at the federal budget. You actually find things, don't you?
You really do. And again, I could not give President Trump and Elon Musk more credit. This Doge effort is brilliant. It's so galling to listen to the media, to Democrats, howl and scream about, this is an unelected, unaccountable official. No, this is one of the more brilliant, accomplished, effective human beings ever to walk the planet, right? And the fact that he's, given up his time and effort to try and fix this mess. I wish every American could have been in the meeting with probably a couple dozen senators and Elon Musk earlier today. And, first of all, he starts out, the reason I'm doing this is we're $2 trillion in debt. And, this country is too precious. I mean, we can't allow this country to go bankrupt. So, I'm bringing my skill set to bear here with, I don't know how many dozen, 20-somethings, other brilliant people that I think are probably, I know his chief operating officer, Steve, I didn't catch his last name, said it's literally a 24/7 operation.
Amazing.
And they're going into these agencies. And they're using their agency personnel. They're not overstepping their bounds. I mean, they made that very clear. They're staying within, exactly what they can do. They're not doing things they can't. And they're asking questions that, quite honestly, should have always been asked. Hey, how many credit cards does federal government employees have? And I don't want to quote the number, but it's an outrageous number. Yeah. It exceeds the number of federal employees there are. They go there, okay, how many software licenses do you have for the number of people in this department? Again, just basic questions that nobody's ever asked. They go in the Treasury Department, they realize, again, I don't have the exact number, but billions and billions and billions of dollars of expenditures. I don't know how many expenditures have absolutely no accounting code.
Yeah.
They don't. It's just going somewhere, and it's not associated with any appropriation. So they're just putting in some basic controls that any little business, has to have, for example, when the IRS comes to audit you. Because the government requires business to have this information, this backup, this kind of, control. But government apparently doesn't need to have it. So again, what Elon is doing is, again, they're going by contract and contract. They're asking questions that have never been asked to these agencies. They have brilliant people, even getting these legacy computer systems and able to extract information. And he said their goal is to identify $4 billion per day of savings. They're ahead of that pace, by the way. If they do that, by September 30th, they will have identified $1 trillion of savings per year. Per year.
Amazing.
To me, that's exactly where we need to be. Yeah. I put together my thousands, line item budgets here, different baselines using Clinton from 99, Obama 2014, Trump from 2019. Inflate those numbers based on population growth, inflation, use this year's Social Security, Medicare, and interest, and you end up with a baseline budget of somewhere between $5.5 and $6.5 trillion. If Elon Musk identifies $1 trillion worth of savings, we're down to about 6.3. A little higher than I'd like, but I'd accept it.
Getting closer,
not a problem. Yeah. But the trick here, though, is he doesn't have power to enact the legislation to realize those savings. We can suspend, they can stop payment on the contracts for a time, but then President Trump's going to have to fight for an impoundment power. That's going to be up to the courts. But the sure way of doing it is having Congress, having the Senate and the House use the reconciliation process on the mandatory spending side, and we've got plenty to use. There's $1.3 trillion of other mandatory spending, not Social Security, not Medicare, not even Medicaid. There's $1.3 trillion that we can, through reconciliation, we can look at that and certainly utilize to realize those savings that Elon Musk is identifying.
So I want to go back and do some math, because last time I think we had you on, you had in your mind, and I think a very reasonable goal, $15 trillion of savings over 10 years. Elon Musk is already on track for $10 trillion. That would be pretty good. The two House and Senate bills are kind of like, about $2 trillion over 10 years? Or a pretty big gap from businessmen and politicians on where to cut.
No, the Senate bill, again, Lindsey Graham agreed to take a fourth option of mine, which was President Trump's budget projection for 2025, his last budget.
Right.
And that equates to $6.61 trillion. So that'd be about a $1.3, $1.2 trillion per year savings. That's $12 trillion over over 10 years. So no, the Senate budget is pretty aggressive. Now, again, a budget blueprint is a long way from passing legislation to actually accomplish the goal.
Right.
Unfortunately, the House budget at most contemplates going from 7.3 to 7.1.
Yeah.
So it maybe sounds like $2 trillion of savings over 10 years, $200 billion a year from 7.3 gives you 7.1. And again, I appreciate the difficult nature. I think, really respect Speaker Johnson, the House members that are trying to cobble together a majority with a very slim margin. But it's just not adequate.
Yeah, it's amazing. But you're right, the Senate would actually get right into that territory where you were hunting originally, and that's a good sign. And that would really make a lasting difference. Do you think people are starting to realize when they hear the fact that just the debt service is $1 trillion a year now, but more than we spend on national defense, that people are starting to get worried about this mountain of debt? And does that add some extra pressure on lawmakers and politicians to go harder, deeper, and farther than they've ever contemplated?
Well, what we have for the first time on the conservative side is you have Elon Musk's bullhorn. I've been preaching this since I got here, but the mainstream media just ignores it. They talk about something that'll undermine the conservative cause. So you finally have Elon Musk with his powerful communication platform highlighting all these areas so that Americans are paying attention. But is a majority, or are a majority Americans paying attention? Are they outraged by this? We're not going to know until we actually start putting this into legislation and just see what kind of reaction the public has. But the public should be outraged at how their tax dollars and the money we're borrowing on their behalf, mortgaging their future with, how it is being wasted. Time and time again. Line item by line item. By the way, go to Doge.gov. It's a great website. It shows you contract by contract by contract exactly what this money was earmarked for, what has already been spent on these stupid contracts about DEI and all that kind of crap. So again, Doge is just doing phenomenal work. It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's a disruption that's going to cause decades of benefit to this country when it gets completed. It's really something. You continue to fight relentlessly for transparency on issues we all need, vaccine safety. I know we're a month into the Trump presidency. I think you're still trying to get the archives to turn over those email aliases I sued over 2.5 years ago. Can you give us an up-to-date on what you and Senator Grassley are doing to get those records and why they're still important to the American public?
Well, I just met with the new director of the archives, somebody absolutely dedicated to, being transparent. So I'm very encouraged from that standpoint. Literally before I just got on this podcast with you, I got a call from Bobby Kennedy reassuring me that, he's dedicated to radical transparency. It's been a little slow with the deep state within HHS. It's going to be difficult for all of these cabinet picks, and they're tremendous individuals, and they're all dedicated to radical transparency, but they're dealing with the bureaucracy that exists. And so there are so many roadblocks, and you know this, John. They can come up with 16 ways on Sunday to make an excuse saying, well, we can't turn over that piece of information. That's right. So that's going to take some time to break through. But again, Bobby Kennedy is unbelievably responsive. I told him I was not happy with the production based on our subpoena or the follow-up phone call. I mean, he texted me like within 30 seconds of me texting him.
Wow.
He's called me twice since then. I think he's actually shaking things up. We're apparently going to get some terabytes worth of information tomorrow. So
how about that?
Well, we'll see again. But again, I'm more than willing to give these new secretaries the time and certainly the respect. I know they're dedicated to doing this. But they're fighting the same bureaucracy I've been fighting for, and that you've been fighting for years.
Yeah, no, they're good at hiding, but I think their day is up. The spotlights might finally hit them. I think it's getting closer. Last question I want to ask you about, the tariffs are going to kick in soon, Canada, Mexico, China. That is going to be a major game change in the way the global economy works and also how America positions itself. What's your expectation, and are the American people willing to give the president some room here to implement this tariff policy so that it has some long-term benefit?
Well, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but I have to be honest, I'm concerned. Yeah. A manufacturing state like Wisconsin, agriculture, last time, dairy farming, we were hurt by the tariffs. So we have manufacturers that compete globally.
Yeah. That's going to be watched and see. At least you're listening to your constituents, which is so important. Senator, always a great honor to have you on the show. We've always learned a lot, and it's so good to see the impact you've had in getting some radical transparency going. Good to have you on today.
Have a great day.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks, we got a lot more ahead of us, including budget and government transparency with Congresswoman Mariannette Miller Meeks of Iowa. She's one of our favorites. She'll be on right after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. I know that Doge seems to be in the news cycle a lot, and it hasn't really gone anywhere, and that's because there is just the sheer volume of waste, fraud, and abuse, I think, is staggering to the American people. And what has come out even in just this first month, I think, is going to move the needle in a direction that's very beneficial for the American people. And someone who is always fighting for the American people to know all of the spending that happens within our government, the overspending, which is pretty much all of it, Congresswoman from the great state of Iowa, Mariannette Miller Meeks. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amanda and John. It's great to be with you.
I have one concern about everything that is coming out about Doge, and it is that at the end of this process, when the American people find out all of the shenanigans, all of the waste, fraud, and abuse, all of the ridiculous dollars sent overseas, that if that apparatus that allowed that to happen in the first place is still in place, then when Donald Trump leaves the Oval Office, they're just going to backfill with more ridiculous programs. How does Congress ensure that that can't happen again?
Well, I think that's great to be thinking ahead of that process. And we know that it's scaring a lot of people. So I had Senator Bernie Sanders in my district last Saturday attacking me. We had an Energy and Commerce hearing on Tuesday. All we were doing was voting for the rule to allow us to do oversight. That hearing went 13 hours because of Democrat amendments, many of them attacking Elon Musk and Doge. And so we know it's, the process by which they're doing this to get access to, the line items in Treasury is different than what we can do as Congress people. And so it has uncovered where some spending has gone, where it was not supposed to go, or that none of us would want. So I think we have to, number one, be very, Congress has to do its job and be very literal and very detailed and put a preamble on where we expect spending to go, what our intent is, and what it should be doing. So we need to be better at that. The Chevron doctrine, as you know, that was ruled on by the Supreme Court last year, that is going to help us. And so knowing that, the agencies and people within agencies aren't necessarily experts, and they should not be deferred to make up rules which have the effect of laws, that's going to help us too. So we've got those tools in our toolbox and we need to utilize those. So those are new things. And then I think what's very important, and I learned this when I was director of the Department of Public Health, people don't look at the heads of agencies, either in state government or in the federal government, and then all the people within the bureaucracy. And you know what? Those people are critically important. You need to put talented, knowledgeable people in, good secretaries, good directors in state government, and then they need to watch what rulemaking comes out of their departments. So it is very important, and you need to fill those slots in the bureaucracy so you have people that are looking to do your policies, your agenda. We need people within government agencies that want to help President Trump and us put forward an America First agenda. You cannot leave those slots empty. You fill them with your people, with your supporters, and then maybe some people leave the government of their own accord.
Ronald Reagan's team used to be fond of saying personnel is policy, and I think that's exactly the point you just made. Great point. You and Senator Joni Ernst, two great Iowans, working together an important piece of legislation demanding disclosure of delayed and over-budget government projects. I suspect this is going to be a really big list. Well, how about you?
Well, I think it is. And so, as you all know, our governor, our great governor, Kim Reynolds, was doing Doge before Doge became a thing, making government both more efficient and more effective. How do we deliver services more effectively, but with less dollars and with less waste, fraud, and abuse? Senator Ernst came in to the Senate wanting to cut government spending. And so this bill is part and parcel. We introduced it last year. We got it through the House. We could not get it through the Senate, the Democrat-controlled Senate. No surprise there. And so, now we have an opportunity to do what we wanted to do last year. I think it is a great bill. It allows us to conduct the oversight that, Amanda mentioned. We have to make sure these things stay in place. Once, Doge, if it's dismantled, or Elon Musk goes back to doing the inventive, creative, entrepreneurial stuff that he does, we need to make sure that there are processes and policies and laws in place that allows us to conduct oversight and get information that, having to file a Freedom of Information Act request. And as you know, and talked about with Senator Johnson, you can file, you can ask. I mean, I've had a letter come back 9 months after I made an inquiry to a government agency. We actually had the hearing the day, and I said, are you going to respond to my letter that I sent 9 months ago? So I think this is a very important way that we can continue to monitor, have law and legislation in place to make sure we're conducting oversight and we're getting information that we request.
Yeah. Congresswoman, before we let you go, the American people are obviously on board with spending less, cutting more, getting out the waste, fraud, and abuse. The American people obviously support that. However, if the American people don't actually feel the effects of what's happening right now, then I don't know how much they will support it in the future. When it comes to the framework, the budget resolution that was passed a few days ago, I know that's just a blueprint for what can be cut and what needs to be spent going forward. Did it go far enough for you?
It went far enough. I think we have a House that would like more cuts. We have a Senate that might be a little more tempered. But remember, everybody has a different district. So I have had protests in my district. I've had TV attack ads in January. And now, as I mentioned, I had Bernie Sanders in my district on Saturday. I have the AFL-CIO in my district today protesting me. The Democrats have been driving people there, and we found out, I think there is some information that George Soros and some other individuals are helping to pay people and generate these protests. We had protests at my office in Davenport on Tuesday and the week before. And so there is a lot of activity, a lot of attacks. And then there's also people that are genuinely concerned about the pace of things that are happening. So I think with the cabinet secretaries in place now, they're going to work to help find where government employees aren't doing, or they're not needed, or they're retiring and they don't have to have a position filled. So I think with the cabinet secretaries, along with Doge, working with the Congress and keeping us abreast of things so we know, what's coming at us, I think those things are going to be very helpful. But to your point, if we don't get the border closed and we don't get prices down and a growing economy, people's support may wane. Iowa suffered with the tariffs last time with our ag economy. So they have some concerns. We've heard about it. It's not massive. They're trusting the process right now. So as I said on my telephone town hall, breathe, stay calm, watchful waiting, and don't believe everything you read on the internet, or especially from a Democrat blog.
Amen, amen. Congresswoman Marionette Miller Meeks from the great state of Iowa. Always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side.
Hey folks, did you know that American homeowners have over $32 trillion in equity? That's an amazing figure, but you know the bad news? Criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing. Scammers can transfer your title right out of your name using a one-page document they file at the county. Then they can take out loans against your equity, even sell it behind your back. And the scariest part, you won't find out about it until collection or foreclosure notices start arriving in your mailbox. Now, that is something you don't want to have happen, leaving you, of course, when that happens, in a financial and legal nightmare. The best way to protect your equity is with Home Title Lock's exclusive $1 million triple lock protection. This service offers 24/7 monitoring, urgent alerts, and if fraud should occur, the U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title. So when was the last time you checked on your title? If you're like me, the answer is never. And that's exactly why scammers are counting on you to fail. The good news is for 2025, Home Title Lock is offering you 25% off. And you also get a free title history report when you go to HometitleLock.com and use my promo code JTN25. Now make sure you check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. One more time, go to HometitleLock.com, use the promo code JTN25.
Welcome back, everybody, to Just the News, No Noise. President Trump, Elon Musk, and Doge are off to a good start in identifying fraud, waste, and abuse in our government. But Congress has to play its part, too. And there's actually one move from the past that we can look to, surprisingly made under President Obama, that could help the government rein in the wasteful spending. And with us to explain just what that move is, the CEO of Open the Books, a government watchdog tracking wasteful spending, John Hart. John, great to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, I see what Doge is doing, and it's really wonderful for the American people to have transparency in this type of thing. But I got to say, Open the Books, you guys have been doing this since before it was cool.
We have. Well, thankfully, Senator Coburn worked with then Senator Obama on a bill called the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act. And that put all federal spending online and created USA Spending. And so much of what you see right now in real time, criticizing grants, asking hard questions, that ecosystem was enabled by legislation that Senator Coburn wrote and put into law. And Doge is taking that and really, and that's really the basis of support that they have among the electorate. And I have this metaphor that, transparency cuts through government like water cuts through stone. When it finds cracks, it can wipe away mighty walls of opposition. Mm-hmm. So as that flow of information keeps going through your outlet, through others, through our organization, and a whole ecosystem of groups, it's going to put a lot of pressure on policymakers to make durable, lasting cuts. And that's really what people want to see happen. President Trump was elected with a mandate to make people's lives easier in the day-to-day. It's not an abstraction. People want to pay less for groceries. They want lower inflation. And one of the most important ways to do that, besides cutting taxes, is to cut spending and to reduce the pressure that people feel in their daily lives through overspending in Washington.
Such a great point. John, you have done over the course of your career a lot of work to show that it isn't just the spending that adds a burden on the American people, it also the regulatory state, adding regulations that further add burden to the American people. The REINS Act got slipped into this budget blueprint. It's a pretty significant opportunity. How important is it for the Senate to include that in the final conference report?
Yeah, John, that's immensely important. I think, one of the problems we have when we talk about these numbers is people think of it as a fixed pie, but the pie is not fixed. You want the pie to grow. And one of the ways to deal with our deficit problem, and when we're spending more on interest on the debt than we are on defense. I mean, that's a national security threat. So you have to grow the economy and shrink the waste as a proportion of what the economy is. And deregulation is the key way to do that. And, one of the pieces I just wrote is on earmarks and how we got, during the earmark ban era from 2011 to 2021, that saved about $141 billion, otherwise money that would have been spent. And it led to the first real year-to-year decreases in spending since the end of the Korean War. But it also focused Congress's attention on all of the other things that they need to do to get all the regulation off of people's backs so that the economy can grow. So I would love to see Doge, bring the earmark ban back, push for that, and also look at things like regulation within EPA, where there's the National Environmental Policy Act hasn't been updated in 50 years. There's all kinds of great energy projects that have been blocked, often by environmental groups, by the way, that would unleash energy abundance and lower prices, get the economy going. And you've got to do both. You've got to deal with the spending side, but also get rid of regulations that are choking economic growth and innovation and creativity.
The 1-2 punch.
Yeah. John, the Democrat Party looks very different from even just Barack Obama. But the fact that Barack Obama was on board with at least a moratorium on earmarks tells me that maybe there could be some Democrat support, some bipartisan support for that on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things that was not getting enough attention right now is, as John remembers well, when he was covering us through the Tea Party era, is today there has been a major political realignment. So one of the reasons why we didn't cut as much as we wanted to 15 years ago, and going farther back during the Reagan years, the Grace Commission found that 1 out of every 3 tax dollars was wasted. And of course, that didn't lead to big cuts. There were tremendous growth during the Reagan years. We won the Cold War, but we didn't cut spending. And the reason I'm optimistic now, and I think we could get Democrats, is that, you know, the party of the working class is now the GOP. So that those roles have flipped. So when Democrats would demagogue us 15 years ago for wanting to cut, you know, social services, cut programs, and they had the parade of horribles of how, you know, reducing agency spending would lead to foodborne illnesses and so on and so forth. You know, who are they talking to now? They've lost the room. Are they talking to the faculty lounge at universities? Or are they talking to the green room at media shows? And so no one's really listening to their arguments. And so I think that gives, you know, smart Democrats ought to look at that and realize there has been a realignment, and that they ought to get on the right side of the voters. And the sooner they do that, the sooner they're going to find their way out of the wilderness, which is what any smart political party would do.
I mean, if they don't find a way to realign, in the words of Mr. T, I pity the fool, because I don't know what the future for their party even looks like. John, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, go check out their organization, Open the Books. You will find out some astounding and frankly appalling things.
I didn't see that coming.
All right, everybody. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody. Let's stay on Doge for a moment, because they have already seen some success at the federal level. But what about individual states implementing their own version of Doge? Is it a good idea? The man joining us now thinks that it certainly is, especially in Ohio. He is Ohio Secretary of State, as well as candidate for Ohio Auditor of State, Frank LaRose, our great friend. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Yeah, Amanda, it's about transparency, efficiency, and accountability, things that we always need more of in government. One of the things that we have here in Ohio is that our state auditor has the power to perform a process audit, to come in and look at how local and state agencies are operating. Are they overstaffed? Are they using bad old technology or just antiquated processes? And that's exactly what I plan to do as the auditor of state. I'm calling it O-Doge. We're trying to bring some government efficiency to the Buckeye State.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting thing. I'm sure all the ills that we see in a federal government, there'll be some found. Although Ohio's a pretty efficient state, but I think you're going to find some great things. Another place where you've been very efficient is in the courts, sir. You have championed election integrity, and I think a lot of people look at Ohio and say it's one of the gold standard states for how you do election integrity. But the left keeps suing you, and I don't think you're getting tired of winning. I think you're like 8 or 9-0, aren't you?
I'll tell you what, we've been going up against the likes of Mark Elias and the ACLU, and we've been winning because we don't settle these lawsuits. We fight these lawsuits. When they come and try to sue your state or my state, when they're suing their chief elections officer, they're trying to make election law at the courthouse. That's not where it should be made. Election law should be made at the state house. They literally sued me last year saying that we should accept a driver's license that says non-citizen on it. Of course, we went and fought and won that one. And then the Biden administration was attempting to weaponize the federal government to use it to do voter registration and turnout to benefit the Democrats. I joined in a lawsuit with the America First Policy Institute to sue the Biden administration. Of course, thankfully, because of President Trump's executive order undoing all of that nonsense from Biden, that lawsuit now can be declared a victory. In fact, it was declared moot just recently by the court. And so put another one in the win column.
I love it. Another check. Sir, Ohio has done such a tremendous job with cleaning up elections under your tenure as Secretary of State. And I know that states are their own administrators of their elections, but on the federal level, there are security measures that can be implemented. We've seen a number of pieces of proposed legislation on the Republican side. What can Capitol Hill learn from Ohio about it?
Yeah, I was talking with the House Admin Committee about this not too long ago. I'm hopeful that they will pass the SAVE Act to give us better tools to identify non-citizens on the voter rolls and remove them. We're already doing a good job of that in Ohio, but we need more. And I think that there are some best practices that can be incentivized as well. I'm also looking forward to working with Secretary Noem at the Department of Homeland Security to improve this thing called the SAVE database. It is this antiquated old database that we have to use right now to look up who's a citizen and who's not. And I know that her team is going to want to work with us to improve that so that chief elections officers in every state can do a better job of preventing non-citizens from voting.
Yeah. It's pretty remarkable. I want to turn to another topic I know is close to your heart. You're a former Green Beret. You served this country bravely. President Trump is really rebuilding the military with Pete Hegseth as his lead man on the job. Your early thoughts of just some of the early policy decisions and getting back that warfighting machine to its best fitness?
Well, as you know, I'm a reservist still in the Army, so I'm not going to speak in that capacity. But as a citizen and as an office holder, I do talk to a lot of my friends that are serving on active duty, and they're excited. They signed up to serve in the armed forces because they want to defend our American way of life. They want to contribute to protecting our nation. And they were dismayed by the nonsense that had been going on over the last few years, where the left was trying to turn our Defense Department into some kind of a social experiment. Our job is to meet the enemies of our country and to defeat them on the field of battle. And that's exactly what President Trump is tuning up the Defense Department to be refocused on. That's what Secretary Hegseth is focusing on as well. We're the most lethal fighting force on the planet. We don't need to be spending our time on DEI nonsense.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good point.
I think you're already starting to see a shift, at least in recruitment after the election. Before President Trump was even in office, it already started seeing an uptick. Sir, I want to ask you about someone who has tossed their hat in the ring for governor in the state of Ohio. You guys have done such a great job with election integrity, and now you are no longer a purple state, you're a red state, and Vivek is running there. What do you think?
Well, I've been out on the road with my friend Vivek Ramaswamy the last couple of days. I was kind of the warm-up act out on the road as he was making his announcement tour. I'm proud to announce that he's endorsed me for auditor of state, and of course, I'm supporting him. Listen, I learned this in the military. There are leaders you follow because you have to. They've got more rank than you do. And then there are those leaders, and this is rare, who you follow because you want to. You would run through a wall for these people because they've got a vision, they've got the courage to actually see it through. Vivek Ramaswamy is that kind of leader. He is going to turn Ohio into a state of excellence, and I look forward to being by his side as we do that.
And you're getting a lot of endorsements, too. A pretty prominent guy in Congress put his name behind you, Jim Jordan. That's a big one. The Ohio ticket looks pretty solidified this early, a year and a half into the next election. That's a pretty good party unity. What's going on behind the scenes?
Well, I tell you what, we've got some great talent in Ohio, and I'm just proud to be part of what is becoming a really strong statewide ticket. I think Vivek is going to be our clear nominee for governor. He's got President Trump's support, and we've got great people falling into the roles of Attorney General and my replacement as Secretary of State. We've got term limits in Ohio, and it's a good thing for us to be unified. Listen, you don't need to be a ballistics expert to know that everyone gets wounded in a circular firing squad. So hopefully we can have some unity in the conservative side of the Republican Party, and we can go forward and fight and win these races in 2026.
Yes,
Pretty
sir. Very quickly before we let you go, we are seeing lots of protests here on the federal level when it comes to Doge. If you do Doge in Ohio, do you think you're going to have a lot of protests there as well?
Yeah, if I don't, I'm not doing my job well. Listen, in order to make some omelets, you got to break some eggs. And there are going to be people that are upset about it. There are going to be folks that think that they have some sort of a right to a job in the state or federal government that they don't even have to show up to, and where they can't even tell you what 5 things they've accomplished this week. Well, I tell you what, we don't run it that way at the Secretary of State's office. We need to get local and all other entities of state government to operate with the same kind of efficiency.
Absolutely. The Doge omelet. I'm ordering one of those. I'm all in.
Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, thank you so much for being here, sir. I can't for the life of me understand why people are so mad about getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. You would think that they would be happy that maybe they would be saved some money. But anyway, maybe they're getting some on the side. All right, that's all we have for tonight. Grant Stinchfield is